Good morning. It's June 16th, Father's Day, 10:30 in the morning. I wanted to get this podcast out because I've got my daughters coming over, granddaughters, and wanted to get this out there. This preempted four other podcasts we had because I felt there was some urgency about it. I don't want to be an alarmist. My name is Tony Christ. Welcome to Sunshine and Transparency. I just thought with the number of recorded interviews on the internet that are available by so-called epidemiologists and professional medical doctors and people as the past head of CDC and a number of other people, I thought we should bring it up. Plus the evidence of what we're going to be talking about, which is, believe it or not, bird flu. The evidence of it is spreading at a pretty quick pace, and CDC has enacted quite a few things over much of it beginning this month. And it's not gotten the attention that I think it needs to get. So here we go on our podcast on Father's Day, June 16th at 10:30 a.m. in the morning on, believe it or not, bird flu. I am Tony Christ. The program is Sunshine and Transparency. The podcast will be put up on odysseyinvestments.info. This is a 30-second paper I've written that is up at Odyssey Investments under consensus. We have a number of other papers that Dane Critch wrote on finance and investment that are also up. But under consensus are these general topics that I think will be of interest to people, and I don't think the mainstream press has covered. So, what is it about bird flu? Why are cows, some pigs, and many chickens sick today from bird flu? I mean, that's not been a problem before, particularly for cows, which are mammals, and pigs. I think what I discovered and what I want you to know is two researchers in 2012 doing what has become known as gain of function research have altered 5 amino acids. Now, this occurred in 2012 in a lab. They altered 5 amino acids in bird flu that made it contagious, highly infectious to mammals. And that includes, unfortunately, that includes us. We are mammals. And they published the paper. Actually, my understanding is Fauci and Robert Redford had discussions about it. Redford headed CDC during COVID. He did not want the paper to be published because he didn't want other scientists to see how you can make bird flu contagious to humans. Fauci felt, as he usually does, that it's scientific and it needs to get published. Now, again, the purpose of these gains of function type research, at least my understanding of it is, to discover a virus so that you can develop a vaccine to treat it in the lab, so that if it emerges in the general human population, you have a vaccine ready to treat it. That's the theory, as I understand it. The tragedy is, if it gets out of the lab, you already have started the infection in human beings, and it can mutate. Viruses don't stay the same; they're in constant change, and you could have a COVID-like epidemic. Now, one of the reasons I thought there was such a need for urgency to get this bird flu paper out so people could see it is there was an article written by Nell Greenfield Boyce and published called Making Bird Flu More Contagious in 2014. And in the article, she talks about 386 deaths, human deaths from bird flu out of a population of 650. And then I did the calculation. Well, that's 60%. I said, well, COVID was under 1%. This bird flu kills 60%. Wow. Said people need to know about this. Now, the other thing that came up just a couple days ago, and Redford has been on warning about this for a few months now. But the other thing that came up just a couple of days ago, and it was Redfield again, and Redfield says that bird flu has a 25 to 50% fatality rate. Wow. While COVID only had 0.6 of 1%. Think of it. And it's all particularly troubling in this context. There's a man I wasn't aware of, but I read about him recently, and I've included him in this presentation, Bill McGuire. He's a professor of geophysical and climate hazards at the University of London. Now, the interesting thing about this character is he also was an author on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate, the IPCC, and also contributed to a group called SAGE that advised the British government through COVID. And I want to read you what he said because it's so troubling. He says, and this was actually published May 13th, 2024. So it's fairly recent. He says, and again, this is Dr. McGuire, if I'm brutally honest, the only realistic way I see emissions falling as fast as they need to avoid catastrophic climate breakdowns. Now he's obviously a climate freak, is the culling of the human population by a pandemic with a high fatality rate. Culling of the human population? Well, that means killing humans. Shit, that's terrible. And here is a man advising the British government, advising councils on COVID, and he's saying that the only thing long-term that's going to work is reducing the human population by a pandemic. And that got my attention. And that was out there May 13th, 2024. And Redfield, who had not really been particularly noticeable, I mean, he was in the Fauci, Bricks, Collins team pushing the big pharma vaccines for COVID. But later, his divisions with Fauci became known, and he became against that whole type of research, gain of function research, which Fauci so embraced, and which now it has been proven that gain of function research occurred at the Wuhan lab in China. And in testimony last week, Fauci admitted that the COVID virus could have come from that lab. That's the first time he's admitted that. And that was somewhat interesting. Now, Fauci, of course, is not there anymore. He left the scene in 22. We do have a human case of bird flu, and actually 4 total cases. You have 85 herds, not cows, herds of cattle in 10 states that are infected. You have 96 million chickens that are affected. You also have water supplies in the West and also milk supplies that are testing high for bird flu. So I felt we have a sequence of Sunshine and Transparency podcasts that are coming up. I've already written the papers for 4 of them. We have a very interesting 2-step sequence on the economics of medicine in America and why we are so expense laden in our medical practices. We get into that in complete detail, and we're later going to compare ourselves. We have a very centralized medical system. We're going to compare it with a decentralized system uh, in Switzerland and see if we can get some guidance of coming out of our morass in medicine. We have a presentation coming up in Loco Parentis, Latin for in the place of parenting, in the place of a parent, the way this country was run for 200 years, and what has repressed in Loco Parentis in K through 12, and even in neighborhoods today, preventing adults from parenting younger citizens, and what are the effects of that. We have that coming up. We have our part 2 of Is There a God? And we're going to discuss the 2 types of believers in the world and how they break down and how 85 to 90% of humanity believes in a power greater than man. And we're going to discuss the anthropomorphic group, the group of believers, which is by far the largest group that believe uh, uh, their concept of a power greater than man is has human characteristics, and also they espouse a moral creed or code that societies adopt ethically that believe in their particular brand, and we're going to discuss the other kind too that believe God is in everything. So that's coming up. All those podcasts are coming up, but I preempted every one of them and jumped ahead with this bird flu because it's going so quickly. Now, it has not become human to human transferable. Nobody knows when and if, but it is extremely troubling to see leaders, medical doctors, and epidemiologists and members in CDC now are devoting hundreds of millions in resources in the last 2 weeks to test and stop it and to get a handle on what's occurring. It has made the transitions to mammals in the lab. It's made the transitions to mammals in extremely large herds of cattle. It's infecting milk. It's in water supplies. And it's not in a lethal form by air yet. But according to Redfield, and his testimony was just yesterday, and he says it would, in theory, not in practice, in theory, it would have a death rate that could be 50 times greater than COVID. And you have other gentlemen like we covered, and we read you the quote at the very beginning that believe the human population, Bill McGuire, that believe the human population needs to be culled, CULLED, killed by an infectious pandemic. And he's advocated that as a cure to future environmental problems, and there are elites that have associated themselves with that too. So we're making you aware of these facts. We want you to pay attention to it and follow it. And again, it's bird flu. We will have by later today a paper posted on our website, which is odysseyinvestments.info. It will be the 32nd paper we're posting, all on topics I think that should be of interest. Many of the papers are only 2-page papers. They are under consensus on odysseyinvestments.info, our website, and you're more than welcome to go there. The podcast will also be up on the website later today. So I want to thank you all for listening in. I want to wish all the dads out there a happy Father's Day. I've got daughters coming over here, and I've got to get a brunch ready for them, and I've got to get off this line. I'm actually the cook. That the Greeks always have a backup vocation, and what more could a Greek be doing? A guy whose mom and dad were Greek, uh, other than cook. That's always been my backup vocation. I love to do it, and I wish you a blessed day and a blessed week, and look forward to our future podcasts. In summary, I mentioned to them we're going to do in loco parentis. We're going to do part 2, Is There a God? We're going to do medical economics. We're going to spend 2 weeks on it. It's such a big portion, 4.5 trillion of what we spend today on our GDP goes into medicine. It's outrageously higher than most other countries in the world. And why it's so high, we're going to get into those issues. So please stay tuned in coming weeks for those podcasts. But be aware, bird flu is here and it's out there. Pay attention. And God, we pray it never gets a footing in the human population. Have a great week. Have a blessed week. Have a happy Father's Day. Tony Chris saying, see you later. Take care.